Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. It really means a lot to me. I love the community. I love when you guys post very thoughtful, very demure, if I will, posts on there. Okay, because a lot of them are spam. But like this one, I saw it's my boy Robert Goldman. And he knows better than posting spam. Shout out to Robert Goldman. He has a consulting firm called ALCOA-CCEA. And he actually has a very good, and I told him, I commented, this was so good, I said I'm going to make a video on this. So, his post is about the full ALCOA. So it's not just attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete ALCOA-CCEA. But now there's another CEA after the ALCOA-CCEA. So it's actually ALCOA-CCEA. It's crazy. I'm glad I have it in front of me, but I never did a video on the full ALCOA-CCEA. But after the dash, it's complete, consistent, enduring, and available. Because I guess been having issues with the sites on the documentation practices. Good documentation practices is now ALCOA-CCEA, and again, it is attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, complete, consistent, enduring, and available. Maybe in 5 years, there's like more letters behind this, but for now, these principles define high quality data, ensuring that every data point is collected is trustworthy and audit ready. And then Robert Goldman poses the question, are you applying them effectively? So he gives a real world scenario, and we're going to go through, we're going to read his post, and then we're going to give more real world examples on this. So here's his real world scenario. Imagine a data entry coordinator that's backdating entries to clean up the source docs. It may seem like a harmless fix, but it instantly violates contemporaneous and accurate of ALCOA-CCEA, obviously raising red flags in any audit. And you can get caught very quickly. Experienced auditors know how to catch this. Even good monitors know how to catch this. Why does this matter? Non-compliance can lead to regulatory setback, lost time, and compromise patient safety. Worse yet, it can damage the trust stakeholders place in your trial. So here's the challenge. Which ALCOA-CCEA principle do you think gets overlooked most often? And what strategies do you use to consistently enforce all of them? So let's just go through one by one. I actually did a video with Daniel actually about a year ago on ALCOA-CCEA, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. But I've never done one on the other three, consistent, enduring, and available. So let's go through them one by one again. Attributable. Who generated the data? Who originated the data? This is why delegation logs are important. This is why it's important to have, for every user, if you're using an e-source like Creo, to obviously have their own login credentials. And every data point really needs to be associated with a specific person. Legible. You don't have this issue with e-source, but you do on paper source all the time, especially from doctors. They write notes like chicken scratch sometimes, and half of the sites still use paper source. This is an issue. Legible has to be legible. Contemporaneous, meaning when the lab results come in, does the PI sign them right away in a contemporaneous manner? Original. Is this the original data, or do we have something else that's this, what you think is the original is actually a derivative of something else? You see this a lot with medical records. Sometimes coordinators will write the narrated version of a study of a patient's medical history. Well, and then you get the medical records later. Well, the narration is not the original. The medical records you get now are the original. And they're also more contemporaneous because they're closer to the truth, the data, than the narrated version. Accurate. Original. Original is what I just said. Accurate. Is it accurate? If the blood pressure was 121/82, is that what's in the EDC? But a lot of times accurate, and even more importantly than that trivial matter, that seemingly trivial, is medical history and doses of con meds. And you see this a lot with the example I just provided with the narrated version of what the patient says and the medical records that have the truth. Now, sometimes the patients have the truth and not the medical records. So maybe with Robert's challenge on his post, which do you think gets overlooked most often? I actually think it's this. I think it's the medical history, specifically the con meds. So, and you see this a lot in psychiatric trials where you are relying, because a lot of it is subjective. How does the patient feel? When did the last episode of depression stop? When did the last episode of mania, if it's bipolar, begin? Sometimes, when was the last exacerbation of depression? If you're relying on a patient narrative first, so let's say at screening, patient tells you, I've been feeling depressed since March of 2024. Fine. You write it down because you don't have the medical records yet because the patient signed the consent form. You didn't obtain the medical records yet because it's screening. So you're relying on a narrative. So patient tells you March 24 and they're taking, let's say, Zoloft 50 milligrams once a day. Now, since that date. Now, a few days go by, you get the records from the patient's private practice or psychiatrist, and you see that they've actually been taking Zoloft since January of 2024. So the patient told you they've been feeling depressed since December, but then why were they given Zoloft in January and not March, like they said? And so now you've got an issue with what's accurate and what's contemporaneous. And sometimes the records that you receive will say Zoloft 50 milligram a day, but then the patient tells you, no, what I actually do is I've only been taking a half a day. So I've been breaking them in half because I was getting too sleepy. I see this a lot in psych. So then you have this back and forth about what's accurate and what's contemporaneous, because any auditor is going to tell you the medical record is accurate. But the patient's narrative is more accurate. They're the ones that know how much they're taking. If they're the ones breaking the pill in half and taking half a day instead of once a day. So you need to have really good documentation explaining if there's a discrepancy. While the medical record states this, the patient actually states this is the case. And now you have a paper trail and a documentation, and now you at least are getting towards what's accurate, what's original. And that's where the discrepancy comes in, because again, any auditor is going to rely on that medical record to prove accuracy. But the patient's more accurate than not. Patient knows when they're depressed. Patient knows how much they're taking. And those kind of things. Complete. Complete is no blanks on a source. Is the visit complete? And I hate when I see from my staff, sometimes it's unavoidable, but partially complete visits. Well, the reason they're partially complete, we're waiting on a lab result. But I always tell them, don't leave blanks. Write a note why it's blank, pending lab results. Something as simple as that. Because the auditor is not going to care they're just going to assume you're not keeping up with these good documentation practices. And same thing with a monitor. They're going to think you didn't do it for some reason. That's a deviation. Why didn't you get lab results? Well, we didn't receive them yet. Doesn't mean we didn't do the labs. So writing the note, okay, again, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. All of those terms, all of those principles, good documentation principles, apply to this particular scenario. I see that a lot too. Now the new ones, I'm going to have to think a little bit about them because the second C there, after the dash, is consistent. And consistent is essentially, are you following your SOP? Are you following the protocol the same way for every single visit? So for example, at screening, are you following the same process every visit? Or is every visit completely different and you just leave it up to chance how it's done? Because then you get to the biggest FDA finding, besides lack of PI oversight, of the site's not following their own SOPs, their own standard operating procedures. So you got to make sure it's consistently done the same way every single time. So for this study, every screening visit is done this way at our site. For this study, every visit 2 is done this way. And this can also apply to source docs, less so with eSource, because eSource forces you to create a workflow for every visit. You can't you can't do it how you want to do it. Whereas with paper, you kind of can. Because with paper, you don't even need to use the same template every time. You can just grab a progress note. I've monitored oncology studies as a monitor, and I've seen visits being done completely different ways. Sometimes the visit would be done on the back of a progress note. Other times the notes would be written on a sticky note. Other times they wouldn't have a note. That's not consistent, right? And with eSource, you at least are forcing the site to have consistency. And then consistently following your SOP. It's a huge finding during audits of the sites not following their own SOP. That's a big problem. So you got to be consistent. If you find yourself consistently not following your SOPs, you need to revise your SOPs. And then the E is enduring. So enduring means, is this going to last? Like, are you going to actually have to come back and change this data for some reason? And this goes back to the example I brought up of, at least the way I see this E for enduring, goes back to my example of a start date for a medication. If you have to keep going back and forth because the patient keeps telling you something else, and now you're getting the pharmacy records in addition to, let's say, hospital records, and the pharmacy records say something else, or now there's like new medications on the pharmacy records that weren't on the medical records from the hospital, and they weren't what the patient stated, that's not enduring. Now you have to go back. Let's say you get the pharmacy records later. You have to go back and revise the data, which is also violating accuracy, right? Accuracy and enduring. And then enduring also means that the records are going to be around long after the study is done, which relates to the last letter in this alphabet soup of an acronym of ALCOA-CCEA of available. And available, enduring is after the study's over, and also it relates kind of to the data. Is that like your final answer kind of thing? And are the records enduring beyond the close of the study? Available is, are they available for the CRA to monitor at their monitoring visits? I remember during my monitoring days, I would go monitor the site, and the most recent visits, I would frequently not have things available for me. And it would actually be written in my monitoring report, subject number 123's last visit on this date source documents were not made available to the CRA. And that's not okay. Like, that should not be a thing. The source should be available as soon as it's created. And usually you get all kinds of excuses. Well, the pharmacy has it, or the front desk has it. It actually happened with our site. This happened recently to our own site. We had an informed consent that was revised. And as you know, if you've been watching these videos, every time informed consent is revised, there's a new amendment. Every patient that's in the study has to reconsent. And we followed it. Every patient reconsented. But one patient, we gave him the original instead of making a copy and giving him the copy. We gave him the original and we never made a copy. So the patient went home with his original ICF after we reconsented him. And we asked him to bring it back. We realized a day later or something. And we asked him to bring it back, and he eventually brought it back but left it with the front desk. And so when the monitor came to monitor, they saw, hey, well, everyone reconsented except this person. This is a deviation. And it was our bad. We didn't write a process of consent for that reconsent. And it turns out we had to tell the monitor, no, it was just not available because this is what happened. And we explained what happened and that it was with the front desk, and that we did eventually obtain it and re-upload it. And that's available. And that happens a lot. So, Robert's challenge is which of these gets overlooked most often. I actually think it's available. I think it's contemporaneous, and I think it's accurate. Those are the ones. But really all of them. I mean, attributable is probably the least overlooked. Illegible is probably the least overlooked now because of eSource. But contemporaneous, you see doctors like not signing or not assessing causality in a timely manner. Original is always an issue because there's always a record, especially for medical records or concomitant medications. Accuracy too. So really it's all these late ones, like available, enduring, not so much, consistent and complete and accurate and original. So pretty much all of them. I kind of went through each one by one on real world situations. And let me know in the comments what you think, or if you're still confused, or your real world situations. And as far as Robert's post is concerned, for this particular topic, he got a lot of comments, and I'll probably link to it underneath. So instead of linking to Robert, I'll link to this one because they didn't have any comments, but a bunch of people liked it. And so I'm curious to know what your situation would be, your real world scenarios for these particular principles of ALCOA-CCEA. Drop your thoughts. Which ALCOA-CCEA principle do you think gets overlooked the most often in real world scenarios? Like, subscribe, comment, share. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye. Hey, if you guys like that kind of content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Stay tuned for more videos.